All right, guys, today we're going to cover Unit 1, Basic Concepts, Topic 1.4, which is demand. Okay. All right, so first of all, we need to figure out what is demand, right? And the definition for demand is the different quantities of goods the consumer is willing and able to buy at different prices. Now, the two big part of this definition is willing and able, right? So a lot of us, right, are willing to buy a Ferrari, right? Like we want a Ferrari, but we're not able to because we don't have the cash flow to be able to do that, right? A lot of us, on the other hand, are able to buy diapers, right? But unless you have a baby, right, you're not willing to do that. So, for example, I have a 9-month-old, and he still needs diapers. So I'm willing and able to buy diapers for him, right? And that would mean that I'm part of the demand for diapers. Now, the other example that I used was Ferraris, right? Like if you're willing to buy a Ferrari but you're not able to, then you don't count for the demand of Ferraris. Now, that's the definition of demands. Now, looking into what is the law of demand. So the law of demand is going to be an inverse relationship with price and quantity. So what is inverse? Inverse is just one's going to go up, right, and the other one's going to go down, right? So as price goes up, quantity is going to go down, right? As price goes down, quantity goes up. And that should make perfect sense to us, right? If something's cheaper, we're going to buy more of that something, right? Now, the law of demand occurs because of three overlapping effects, right? It's the substitution effect, the income effect, and then the law of diminishing marginal utility. All right. So the law of demand again occurs because of the substitution effect. Now, what is the substitution effect? It's pretty simple. Like, let's say that you go to a restaurant, right? And at that restaurant, you normally will always drink Dr. Pepper. But this particular restaurant that you go to, they don't have Dr. Pepper. All they have is Mr. Pibb, right? So you go and you ask the waiter, hey, can I get a Dr. Pepper? The waiter says, you know what, all we have is Mr. Pibb. And you say, that's okay, bring me a Mr. Pibb. Then you could consider that Dr. Pepper, or you could consider the Mr. Pibb a substitute, right? Or let's say that you go into a 7-Eleven, right? And you have the intention of buying a Gatorade, but they're all out of Gatorade. So you decide that you're going to buy a Powerade instead. That would be considered a substitute, right? So it's something that you would buy in place of another of the product that you're wanting, right? So and so how does this affect the law of demand, right? The law of demand is that if price goes up for a product, the consumer will buy less of that product and more of the substitute product, right? So like, let's say it's Coke and Pepsi, right? Well, if you normally buy Coca-Cola, right, and the price for Coca-Cola goes up to $5 a case or $10 a case, right, and Pepsi is significantly cheaper, well, then you would buy Pepsi instead because it's cheaper, right? That would be considered that would be part of the substitution effect, all right? You're just substituting out the different products, right, based off of the price. Now, income. Let's say the income effect is if the price goes down for a product, the purchasing power increases for consumers, allowing them to buy more of that product. So think of this, right? You make $10 a week, right? Or that's a simple, $10 a week, right? And so every day, you go and for the school week, you go to lunch, right? And you go and you buy a $2 burrito, right? So at the end of the week, by Friday, you're out of money, right? You've spent all of your income. And you've bought a burrito every day. So Monday you buy a $2 burrito, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So you've spent the $10. Now, if the price of that burrito goes down, right, the income effect tells us that we would probably buy more burritos, right? So instead of buying the $2 burrito on Monday, we would buy two $1 burritos, right? And so again, that is going to have an effect on why when price goes up, quantity goes down, and when quantity goes down, price goes. When quantity goes up, price goes down, right? That inverse relationship for the law of demand. Now, the last one is the law of diminishing marginal utility. So remember that utility, the word utility means satisfaction, right? So additional satisfaction that you get, right? So when you buy, we buy goods because we get utility from them, right? You get a certain number of utils from the purchase, right? Or from consuming it. So like, you got to think like happy points, I guess, but if you eat a slice of pizza, maybe you get 10 utils from that, okay? So the law of diminishing marginal utility states that as you consume anything, the additional satisfaction you will receive will eventually start to decrease. Now, what does that mean? That means that as you eat more of a good, right, that you're going to get a lot of satisfaction at the beginning, but then you're going to get to a point where you're not satisfied anymore, right? Think of when you go to like an all-you-can-eat buffet, right? You go to CC's Pizza or you go to, wherever. And, that first slice of pizza, man, that's a really good slice. And then as you consume your second slice, your third slice, your fourth slice, your fifth slice, up to your 10th or 20th slice of pizza, it's not going to be as delicious as that first initial slice, right? And so we have to think of, what does this have to do with, like, what do businesses use this for? Like, what is their, how would they use the law of diminishing marginal utility? Or how would they use the law of demand? Well, think about that. Think about when you go to anywhere and you buy in bulk, right? You buy, if you go to, let's say, Disneyland, right? That's the example here is you go to Disneyland. The first day is pretty expensive, right? The second day is not as expensive as the first day. And as you continue to buy more and more days, the per day cost decreases. Why does it decrease? Well, because Disneyland understands that as you go to Disneyland, the more and more you've ridden the rides, you've already started to, your utility that you get from being at Disneyland starts to diminish the more time you spend there, okay? Now, let's go ahead and talk about graphing demand. So demand, the demand curve is a graphical representation of a demand schedule. Now, a demand schedule, I didn't cover that earlier, but a demand schedule is just going to be a set number of prices, the quantity. So you'd have prices on one side and quantity on the other. It's very similar to this. So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, this is the price, and this is the quantity demanded, and let's say this is going to be 20, 15, 10, and 5. Okay. And so these are dollars, right? So $1, right, they would buy 20. $2, they would buy 15. At $3, they'd buy 10. And at $4, they would buy 5. Okay, and so that makes sense, right? And that again, it shows us the law of demand. As price increases, what's happening to quantity? That's decreasing. As price decreases, what's happening to quantity? That's increasing, right? Again, showing us that law. So when we look at the demand curve, that's going to be a graphical representation of these points, right? And so you will have price on the y-axis, and you're going to have quantity demanded on the x-axis, right? So let's go ahead and draw that out real quick. So if you have a piece of paper, go ahead and draw out a graph, okay, like this. And so on the horizontal axis, you're going to have quantity demanded, and on the y-axis, you're going to have price, or vertical axis, right? Whatever. And so your demand curve will look something like this, right? Now your demand curve, make sure that it's always labeled, right? So D. Any of the curves that we do in this class need to make sure that they're absolutely labeled, okay? And so we have our graph right here, okay? Notice that it is downward sloping, right, down to the dirt, okay? Down to the dirt demand curve. Again, price and then quantity demanded. And again, you can see the law of the law of demand occurring here, right? This is price, right? Of course, this is going to be 0. As price goes down, quantity demanded increases. As price goes up, quantity demanded decreases, right? So again, we see that pretty clear here, okay? Now, just while we're looking at this graph right here, just one side note is that, we want to assume that all other factors are like income are held constant. There's things that we could change later, but at this point, we're just looking at this, no outside factors, right? All right. Now, when we drop that assumption, though, we can actually shift the curve to the right or to the left, right? Don't say up or down, just say right or left. It makes it a lot easier, right? Now, there's something to note here before we get into shifts. Now, price is never going to shift the curve. So whenever that comes up, you have to think about that. Price movement is just a slide along the curve. And let me show you that here real quick. So at $5, right, you're at quantity 1, right? If we were to change the price for the item to, let's say, $1, that's right here at quantity sub 2, okay? So that's just merely a slide. So price is a slide along the curve, okay? And to actually shift the curve, you have to think of what's going to actually change demand, right? And so there are 5 things that change demand, all right? There's number 1, taste and preferences, right? I'm on slide 29. Number 1, taste and preferences. Number 2, number of consumers. Number 3, price of related goods. Number 4, income. And number 5, future expectations, right? Notice that price isn't in any one of those, right? So again, the 5 determinants or shifters are taste and preferences, number of consumers, price of related goods, income, or future expectations. Now, how does that look when we shift the curve? All right, well, when you increase demand, you can shift that to the right, okay? And you would show an arrow with the increase, right, like this. And then you need to label the curve. So here I'm going to do, and you can label your curves however you want. You want to do D sub 1, D prime, right, D1, however you want to label it, right? But I'll go ahead and just do D sub 1 and then D sub 2. And this is your new curve. And that shows us that that's an increase in demand, right? So at $5, you now have more people, right? Quantity sub 3. You have more people wanting to purchase purchase that good, right? Than at $5 at quantity 1 that we can see right here, okay? So, again, those are the 5 shifters. Now let's look at a decrease. Let me erase some of this real quick. You have D sub 1. Now a decrease in demand is going to be a shift to the left, right? And then you would just label that D sub 2. And again, we can see that pretty clear that this is a decrease in demand. Let me move this arrow down a little bit. So, okay. At this price here, let's say this is $3, okay? Oops, labeled those wrong. Okay. You can see here at point A, right, and point B, you can see that quantity 1, that the decrease in demand has the price stays the same, but there's just less people that are wanting that particular product, right? So when you change demand, the price doesn't change. It's just going to be more people are going to want that good or less people are going to want that good, and that's going to move the curve. So that ultimately should be the question you ask, is if it shifts the curve. Now, if the price moves, that should be movement again along the price or along the curve. Now, price of related goods, right? So I'm going to go over the shifters and kind of show you a few things with the different shifters. So the demand curve for one good will be affected by the change in price of another good, right? So substitutes are used in place of one another. So again, similarly like the substitute effect, right, is that if price for Pepsi falls, then the demand for Coke is going to increase, right? And why is that going to increase? Well, let's look at that. If you have the market for you have two markets, right? You have Pepsi and you have Coke. And so what we said here is if the price for Coke goes up, so it goes from point A to point B, right? And let's say this is $10, right? And let's say this is $20, right? For a case of Pepsi or something, right? And so what happens to the quantity, right? Well, whatever the difference between these two quantities, right? Quantity 1 and quantity 2, whatever that difference is, right? They didn't buy Pepsi, right? So they're there wanting to buy something, right? But, Coke the price for Coke has stayed the same, right? So these people right here are going to go over to the Coke market, right? Or they're going to go in the grocery store and they're just going to, take a step to the side and pick up the Coke case, right? And then buy that instead, right? So that's going to increase the demand for Coca-Cola, right? Again, make sure that you label it and everything. I didn't really do a good job here. This is quantity and this is price. Okay. All right. So again, Pepsi, Coke, that happens there. Now, other thing is the other related good, right? So you have a price of related goods. You have the substitutes, and then you have complements. Now, complements are things that are just generally bought together, right? So like, let's say things that are normally bought together: peanut butter and jelly, right? Milk and cereal, hot dogs and hot dog buns, hot dogs and hamburger buns, right? And so if the price for one goes up, right, well, you can see here, right, just as the price goes up for this, let's just change these. This is going to be hot dog buns. It's going to be hot dogs. So if the price for hot dogs buns go up, right, what's going to happen to the demand for hot dogs, right? Well, you have less people buying hot dog buns, right? So are they going to need hot dogs? No, they're not going to need hot dogs, right? So the demand for hot dogs is going to decrease, right? So you'd see a shift to the left, okay? And so that's, that is the other price of related goods, okay? Now, income. Income has two things that go with it, right? So you have what are called normal goods, and then you have what are called inferior goods, right? Now, normal goods are going to be like luxury cars, seafood, jewelry, homes, and you can't really think of this as these particular items are normal goods and these particular items are inferior goods. It's just based off of income, right? So you just kind of have to think. If your income goes up and you're going to buy more of a particular good, that makes that a normal good, right? If your income goes down and you buy more of that particular good, then it's an inferior good, right? And so let me give you some examples here, right? All right, so if, you guys are high school, most of you guys are high school students, right? So if you get a new job and you're getting paid a lot more, well, you're probably going to stop eating as much at fast food restaurants, right? And so you're probably going to eat more at sit-down restaurants, right? So let's say like McDonald's, okay? So McDonald's would be considered an inferior good to you, right? As your income goes up, you're going to eat less McDonald's, right? And let's say Olive Garden, you're going to eat more Olive Garden. So Olive Garden would be considered a normal good, right? And McDonald's would be considered an inferior good, okay? Now, let me change that up, right? Now, let's say that you're at home and you're not making any money, right? And let's say that you go and you get your first job, right? And you're making minimum wage. Yeah, it's great. Everything's awesome, right? And so you now start eating at McDonald's more, right? So like you start buying your own food, and you eat McDonald's every day, which is probably not the best thing, right? But whatever. Then McDonald's then becomes a normal good, right? And let's say eating at home becomes an inferior good, right? Again, this is not much about off-brand products compared to name brand products. That's not what we're looking at here. It's just simply if you buy more of that good when you make more money, that makes it a normal good. While if you buy less, if you make more money and you buy less of that good, that makes it an inferior good, okay? So again, just examples of normal good are going to be luxury cars, seafoods, jewelries, homes, right? Again, if income increases, demand's going to increase. If income falls, demand increases for normal goods, right? And then inferior goods, what examples would be like Top Ramen or used cars, used toilet paper, nobody's going to use used toilet paper, used clothes, and so on, right? And that is, if income increases, demand's going to fall, and then as income falls, demand's going to increase, okay? And so that's going to be up for us today. Hope you guys learned a lot today, and and see you guys.